Johnny Carson once asked an elderly woman a simple, offhand question during a live episode of The Tonight Show. No one, not Johnny, not the producers, not the audience, could have imagined what her response would unleash. Her words were so powerful that Johnny did something unprecedented. He halted the broadcast. He left his desk. He walked directly into the audience and broke a rule he had never broken in 3 decades of television. By the end of the night, the most composed man in late-night history was openly crying, and so was nearly everyone watching at home. But what makes this moment unforgettable isn't just what happened on stage. It's why that woman was there. Because the grandmother carried a secret she had protected for 34 years. A truth she had traveled more than 2,000 miles to finally share. And a story Johnny Carson never knew he was part of. It was Thursday night, March 12, 1987. NBC Studios in Burbank, California was packed. Every one of the 465 seats was filled. The air buzzed with excitement. Johnny Carson had just wrapped his opening monologue, the audience still laughing at his jokes about politics and Southern California traffic. Ed McMahon sat beside him, grinning as always. Doc Severinsen's band flowed seamlessly into the next segment. Everything felt routine, familiar, comfortable. America's nightly ritual was unfolding exactly as expected. Johnny was relaxed. The first interview had gone well. He was preparing to introduce his next guest when something unusual caught his attention. In the third row sat an elderly woman who wasn't reacting at all. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't applauding. She wasn't smiling. She was staring straight at Johnny Carson, with tears silently running down her face. In that instant, Johnny felt something was wrong, and instead of moving on, he trusted his instinct. That decision would change the night forever. The woman's name was Margaret Ellen Dawson. At 80 years old, she was among the oldest audience members the show had ever welcomed. She wore a modest navy dress and a pearl necklace passed down from her mother. Her silver hair was carefully pinned back. Her hands shaped by decades of work and sacrifice, rested tightly folded in her lap. Beside her sat her daughter, Carol. Carol had paid nearly $800 for the 2 tickets, an enormous amount in 1987, more than a month's rent. But money didn't matter. This trip wasn't about entertainment. It was about time. "My mother has watched Johnny Carson every night for 25 years, Carol told the NBC page who escorted them to their seats. "She's never missed a single episode." What Carol didn't explain was the reason this night mattered so much. 4 months earlier, Margaret had been diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. Doctors in their small Kansas town gave her 6 months, if she was lucky. This wasn't a vacation. This was her final wish. And Johnny Carson was at the center of it. As the show returned from commercial, Johnny scanned the audience again. His eyes landed on Margaret. He noticed the tears, the stillness, the expression of someone holding something heavy inside. He leaned toward Ed McMahon and whispered something. Then Johnny stood up. The band stopped. Ed leaned forward. The audience fell silent. Johnny stepped away from his desk and slowly approached the edge of the stage. "Ma'am," he said gently, "I can see you've been crying. Are you okay?" Hundreds of heads turned toward the third row. Margaret tried to speak, but couldn't. Her lips trembled. She nodded and pressed a handkerchief to her eyes. Johnny didn't joke. He didn't rush. Instead, he sat down on the edge of the stage, legs dangling, bringing himself to her level. "How long have you been watching the show?" he asked. Her voice was soft but clear. "Every night, Mr. Carson. Since October 1st, 1962. I haven't missed a single one." Johnny smiled gently. "That's 25 years. That's remarkable." The audience murmured. Someone clapped. Johnny raised his hand. "May I ask why?" he said quietly. It sounded like a harmless question. It was. Margaret squeezed her daughter's hand until her knuckles turned white. She took a shaky breath. Because your voice sounds exactly like my husband, she said. And he's been gone for 34 years. The studio froze. When I hear you speak every night, she continued, it feels like he's still with me. Johnny didn't move. He had never heard anything like this. Tell me about him, Johnny said softly. The entertainer vanished. Only a listener remained. His name was Robert Dawson, Margaret began. We met in Wichita, Kansas in 1942. I was 17, working in my father's grocery store. He came in looking for work. She smiled faintly. The moment he spoke, I was done. That voice, deep, warm, playful, just like yours. They married 6 months later. Robert made me laugh every night, she said, no matter how hard the day was. Then came the war. Robert was drafted in 1943, at age 24. The night before he left, Margaret said, he held my face and promised me something. Her voice broke. He said, Maggie, I'll come home, and for the rest of our lives, I'll make you laugh every night. Robert shipped out the next morning. Margaret never saw him again. He was killed in France on June 19, 1944. He was 25. I was pregnant when the telegram arrived, she said, looking at Carol. He never met our daughter. The studio wept. For years, I couldn't laugh, Margaret said. The house was too quiet. Then, one night in 1962, her daughter turned on The Tonight Show. And when I heard your voice, she said to Johnny, it felt like Robert kept his promise. Johnny's eyes were red. You helped me survive the loneliest years of my life, Margaret whispered. You kept his promise for 25 years without ever knowing. Carol spoke next. My mother is very sick, she said. Being here tonight, this was all she wanted. She needed to thank you. Johnny stood up. Stop the tape, he said. The red lights shut off. For the first time in 30 years, The Tonight Show stopped recording. Johnny walked into the audience, knelt before Margaret, and held her hands. No one has ever given me a gift like this, he told her. Your husband's promise was never broken. Then Johnny made his own vow. Every night I sit behind that desk, I'll think of you, and Robert. Music played softly as Johnny sat beside her. They talked. He studied Robert's photograph. Margaret laughed, a real laugh. When the show resumed, Johnny looked into the camera. This show isn't just entertainment, he said. Sometimes it's companionship. Sometimes it's a promise. The audience stood in silence, then applause. After the show, Johnny spent an hour with Margaret backstage. Before she left, he gave her his pocket square. This is for Robert, he said. Margaret lived 9 more months, longer than expected. When she passed, she was buried with that pocket square. Years later, Johnny would say she taught him the true purpose of his work. Because love doesn't disappear. Sometimes, it just finds another voice. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs it today. And tell me, what country are you watching from?